Alright, this is Avengers 333, the final issue of the Barry Hama run, and after a great penultimate issue, it takes a nosedive here. Part of the cause is the art. Ryan Paul, he left mid-story, so here we have got very rushed fill-in art by two different people. The blame isn't entirely with the art. The script isn't great either, and I don't know if that's because by this point Barry Hama, he was already out the door and he didn't care anymore, or if this story was just always gonna flame out like this. Even this cover is trash. Mr. Doom and Rage, they're drawn well, they're good, but looking like Kazar and Big Barda, terrible. And then you've got all this empty space up here. Why not draw Division Fly in there or something? So Mr. Doom, he has gate crashed the Avengers party, and here he is electrocuting Rage, and the art is just bad. The scale and the perspective and the composition, it's very bad. I try not to get too critical of art because it seems stupid to criticise art when I myself am not an artist, but this is terrible. If you look at their feet here, they are both grounded, and these feet are actually size appropriate. But as he gone up, it just falls apart. Rage, he's like an angle for some reason. If the idea is that he's meant to be falling back, it really doesn't work because you're using this perspective. And he just looks out of scale. He looks 3 times bigger than Mr. Doom, but doesn't seem to be any taller than him. Also, his other foot is like 2 times bigger than his other foot. Another thing is, for this story, you really didn't want sloppy fill-in art when for most of the scenes you've got big crowds in the background. Then we have got the problem that the art doesn't match the first issue in terms of continuity. It went from being a party filled with dignitaries and various different superheroes to now just being a party of mostly Avengers characters and Wolfman and Mr. Fantasticals, the Fantastic Force there. That's as far as the guest appearances gone. But if you're going back, this double splash page from the last issue, this was great, but it has a purpose beyond looking good. It's a discreet way to establish who is there, what characters are at this party, who is in the room. And if you look, there are loads of guests who aren't heroes. There's political figures and Stanley Lee and other superheroes like the New Warriors. But now we get to this issue and suddenly it's just Avengers characters. There's no consistency. Every panel, it'll just be filling in the background with whatever random Avengers character they can think of. I talked about placement and how that is like one of Ryan Paul's strengths last issue, but it's not just the art, because this is just a bad plot too. We've got all the heroes and they're just standing around listening to Mr. Doom monologue, and worse, monologue about nothing really. They only interrupt him to get him to explain parts of what he is saying, and despite the Fantastic Force being there is virtually no reference or interaction between them and their arch enemy. It's like Mr. Doom doesn't even notice that they are there. Some of them have lines, but none towards Mr. Doom, none related to the events. Like, the Thing just compliments Rage. It's a mess, and unlike last issue, we don't really get to see any of the Avengers do anything really. We saw Sandman and the Vision, they were really good last issue, and here they just get nerfed straight away. And reading this, I did get an even greater feeling that this wasn't much of Barry Hama. I think someone, like an editor, quickly had to write up a script, using a little bit of what they add from Barry Hamner, because the plot does a swerve, and little things like Division's plan from last issue, he said he was going to go on Solid, and then in this one, straight away, he just announces that he's not going to do it. That plan, it won't work, and he doesn't attempt it at all. Mr. Doom's motivation, which he conveniently never mentioned in the first part, he wants to force the Avengers to help him free his mother's soul from hell, and it doesn't really make sense with, well, why would he infiltrate their new headquarters to get their attention? It doesn't really make sense. And then there's bits like this. Well, we've got, look, there's the Black Panther from that film. He's suddenly there, even though he hasn't been drawn once before this panel. And he's also in a costume that he hasn't worn since 1968. And then we've got all these lines of dialogue, and they're just given to any character. There's no personality to them, and it's completely interchangeable. Like down here, we got the Flash. He's talking to Seaman. And the Flash, he has got a real personality. And he's just doing generic exposition. Actually, I've got a good example of that. If we go back to page 2, we have got this line here. I'm trying to obscure who says it, because that's the whole point. He has prevailed for the moment, Hercules, man, because as responsible heroes, we cannot precipitate a brawl that could endanger our guests. Who do you reckon is saying that? I would guess She-Hulks, or maybe Scarlett Johansson, or someone like that. No, it's u.s.agent. It's incredibly out of character for him. It doesn't sound like him at all. And he wasn't even meant to be at this party, because he actually left the Avengers for a few issues, and that's probably why Ryan Paul never drew him last issue. And to get back to the other problem with the art, here we have got Captain America fighting Mr. Doom, and the art, it's just not great. It's overly dark and murky and shoddy, and the poses don't really work. They make no sense, and the fights, they're just not very interesting this time around. Well, this bit with Sandman is okay, I suppose, but it really seems pointless to care about a story that even the writer didn't care about anymore. It's very obvious that he started the script and then decided he was leaving the book, and he just threw down anything to complete his contractual agreement. This is not a good comic. It's boring. It really is just people standing around and doing nothing. Maybe it wouldn't be so bad if the characters were interjecting with personality, or they were being written with actual voices, but they're not. And then we have got the ending, which is pure creator's pet. I have been very welcoming to Rage as a character, and I have not hurled this criticism at him yet, but what we have here is definitely the case that he is a creator's pet. Rage, he beats Mr. Doom. In this room that is full of heroes, none of them do anything to stop Mr. Doom except Rage. Rage, he throws a cupcake at him, and this bit is fine. I have got no problem with that. It's in keeping with his character and his short temper. But then it turns out he threw the cupcake because Rage somehow was suddenly deductive and clever and was able to outsmart Mr. Doom. He beats Mr. Doom, and everything about this, Rage being clever, Rage having the patience to suss out Mr. Doom's plan, even Rage telling the rest of the team how he worked it out, it's terrible, and it completely ignores his character and his arc. It only seems to happen for the sake of wrapping up this story. Like Barry Hamner just went, fuck it, Rage can win. I don't recommend this. This is terrible. It is a weak ending to a run that could have been a lot more special. The first part was brilliant, and the second part is just 22 pages of a bored writer with some rushed art that, I suppose, somewhat matches the script. Next issue starts Bob Patrick Harris's run on the book, and Sandman is just gone next issue, never appears in the book again. Rage, he hangs around for a few more issues, but the only things concerning him are writing excuses to try and dump him from the book. Also, She-Hulk, she's just gone. No mention either. Bob Patrick Harris just seemed to not like her very much. This is poor. I rate it 7 thumbs up.